Hey guys, so I'm recording this video before the final chapter of the story, so please bear that in mind. Now, in this video, I just want to speak my mind, and this isn't about bashing the series or hating Gege for clearly rushing the story or anything like that. This video should feel like a therapy session for us Jujutsu Kaisen fans who have followed the story and have appreciated the characters and have grown to have these characters as one of their own personal favorites. Like for me, Sukuna and Gojo, and especially Sukuna, when he was inside of Yuji-Kuna basically, he has become one of my most favorite villains of all time. He's like Kid Buu from Dragon Ball Z, but he can actually speak his mind and tell you how he's feeling and what he plans to do. I know that's a crazy comparison, but the Yuji version of Sukuna was the ultimate force of destruction. He was so unapologetically evil and destructive that you almost couldn't help but root for him. He's like the Joker, so charismatically evil that you can't help but like him. I made a video on this detailing why I prefer the Yuji version of Sukuna over the Megami version, so if you do want to check that video out, feel free to do so. But this is just one of the aspects of the story that I really like. I'm going to do a video detailing the things I like about Jujutsu Kaisen, just to balance out the negativity and rightfully so, the constructive criticism that is going to be coming Jujutsu Kaisen's way because of the way Gege has ended the story. I just want to emphasize this. I still love the franchise and I've enjoyed the story a lot, especially the beginning half of the story, along with the Gojo flashback and the Shibuya incident arc. I have made videos praising the Shibuya incident arc, making comparisons to the Marineford arc from One Piece, which in my opinion is probably the greatest arc in all of Shonen. Arguably, well, at least for many fans, it's up there, so that is a massive praise, and I have given the story its praise when I feel it's deserved. But I have to say, there are a lot of things that have frustrated me throughout the past year covering the story. Firstly, I want to talk about the world of Jujutsu Kaisen itself. I understand that Gege has made the world of Jujutsu Kaisen basically our world, so of course there won't be no islands in the sky, there won't be an island full of fishmen and mermaids at the bottom of the ocean, there won't be massive mythological beasts running around, roaming freely. I get that, no problem. But the world itself feels so small. When Gege introduced the plot point of Kenjaku meeting the US military and the president of Japan, I thought, yes, we're going somewhere now, other than Japan. We're going to see how the Jujutsu Kaisen version of the rest of the world looks like. And once Gege introduced the rest of the world and the fact that cursed energy can be used as an actual resource for energy, that could have been the endgame plot for the story. In chapter 200, Kenjaku is having a meeting with the president of Japan as well as the secretary of the US of Energy and Environment, Cyrus Veal. Kenjaku reveals to them about cursed spirits, cursed techniques / energy, and the power of Jujutsu sorcerers. Cyrus believes that cursed energy will replace the Earth's resource for energy as the cleanest energy in history. It was also discussed that Gojo by himself with his power can run the whole country. Now think about the development this plot could have easily had. Now the governments are aware of cursed energy and Jujutsu sorcerers. This will only lead to a civil war between the humans, the non-sorcerers versus the Jujutsu sorcerers, which for me is a far more interesting plotline rather than the potential Monster Tengen plotline that we almost got but didn't even end up getting. If this plot were to happen, we could have seen all the other Jujutsu sorcerers from around the world, which would have helped out in the world building of this world and not make the world of Jujutsu Kaisen feel so small. We literally only had the Tokyo and Kyoto Jujutsu schools, but what about the rest of Japan and the world? What about all the other Jujutsu sorcerers? If the governments of the world really wanted to use cursed energy as a form of resource and wanted to use the Jujutsu sorcerers to do it, then that would have made the story a lot more grey rather than just having a typical good versus evil story. There would have been more dilemmas. It would have been like Captain America Civil War, where the main argument for the movie was whether the Avengers can trust the government and whether the government has the people's interest at heart. This is something we could have had, and at the time, Gojo was still sealed away. Gojo being the strongest sorcerer in the world, the real leader of the Jujutsu sorcerers, is now sealed away, so it will give a chance for characters like Yuji and Megami to step up and lead the Jujutsu sorcerers of the world, band them together and create a new era of Jujutsu, which is what Gojo had always said he wanted. But we didn't end up getting that, which was a massive disappointment. I touched on it before, but the Kyoto Jujutsu school, other than Todo, that school didn't do much or anything at all, which was disappointing. Mekamaru did his thing back in Shibuya incident arc, but other than that, they were pretty much non-existent after the Kyoto vs Tokyo Jujutsu tournament. And even in that arc, Yuji was taking on all of them, so how strong were they actually? Yuji took away whatever credibility they had in that early arc, and they went into hiding ever since. Obviously, there's some tongue-in-cheek with my comments, but my points still stand. The Kyoto group have been useless, especially in the second half of the story. Okay, now my next point might be controversial, but I just want to see how everyone reacts to this. I believe there is a strong over-reliance on either Gojo or Sukuna for this story. One of the things I disliked, and it's nothing to do with the story, but this is more of a complaint towards the community, is that the constant rumors of Gojo returning really killed the anticipation of him actually returning. When he returned in chapter 221, I was hyped. I was gassed for his return. But before that, the constant rumor of, oh, Gojo is returning in this week's chapter, or he's definitely returning in next week's chapter, it got to the point where for me, I didn't care if he did return. And he's one of my favorite characters in the story, so that was always annoying, just the weekly rumor of him returning. But let me go back to the point in that I felt that the story was carried by Gojo and Sukuna. It felt like after the Shibuya incident arc, there was a long while before we saw both characters again. And that just fueled our desire to see both characters even more. It felt like the hype for the story died down when they were both away from the story. And when they both did return, Twitter was dominated by their fight, which was the peak of Jujutsu Kaisen hype in my opinion. But before these two had their fight, it felt like the story was on a standstill with the Culling Games, which comes to my next point. The Culling Games, as entertaining as some of the fights were, such as in chapter 178 when we had the triple domain expansion which involved Utah, the fights were entertaining, and in fact I would say the fights in Jujutsu Kaisen are the biggest positive and the best thing about the story. But I will say this, the Culling Games arc really dragged and was just constant fighting and fighting. One minute you will see Yuji and Megumi fighting, the next minute you will see Yuta fighting, and then we will see Hakari and Maki fighting. It was just endless fighting. And this was straight after the Shibuya incident arc. I know there was a mini arc in between, but we still had a massive battle arc just before, and now we're getting another one. I feel the story needed a break from the fighting, and if we actually did take a break and have the story develop the characters and the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, it would have been better in the long run for the story. But just to summarize, my main big 3 points with Jujutsu Kaisen is that the world of Jujutsu Kaisen was not developed at all. There was an over-reliance on Gojo and Sukuna carrying the story, and we barely had any breaks in between the big battle arcs, and any breaks in general to be fair. We just had the Gojo vs Sukuna fight a year ago, and then straight after, Sukuna was in a gauntlet having fight after fight with no break. I've made videos saying how a break would refresh the battle against Sukuna for us fans, but Gege didn't want that. I'm planning to upload a video discussing all the plot points that Gege didn't develop, or should I say missed in the story. So stay tuned for that video. And also stay tuned for all the good things I loved about Jujutsu Kaisen. And just like your tribal chief always says, don't forget to subscribe to the Shaman Tribe.